Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So if you remember when we stopped on Tuesday, I was like, oh man, there's a mistake somewhere, and I don't know what it is. So I went home and I really dug deep into this concept, and what came out of that was the template you're holding in your hand. The process of analyzing a deductive argument is, how many steps are on that? Like 10 or 11? All right, so what I did is I gave you enough templates for every example we're going to do tonight, and then also for the activity we're going to do afterwards. Whenever you fill out these templates, hopefully it should make analyzing the argument much, much easier. And also it'll save you from having to write every single step out like we were doing on Tuesday. All right, so we're going to start over with that argument that we talked about first, the one about the pigs. Okay, so let's look at this argument again. Okay. So example 1. So on your template, under where it says determine whether, the given argument, there should be a line that says given argument, and given, I should have grabbed my yours, I should have, mine's different, thank you. So on the portion that says given solid fact and argument, this is what you're gonna write. You're gonna write, all pigs are pink, I am pink, therefore, I am a pig. That's what goes under that heading. All right. And then if on step 2, where it says identify the simple statements that make up the if-then statement from step 1 and label them with variables. So what we want to do is we want to look at this part right here for step 2. We want to write it as an if-then statement. Okay. So, oh wait, that is step 1. My bad. Step 1, take the solid fact given and make it an if-then statement. So under step 1, we're going to turn this into an if-then statement. So it'd be if 1 is a pig, then 1 is pink. So you transform that into an if-then statement. Now on step 2, identify the simple statements that make up the if-then statement from step 1, which is this right here, and label them with variables. You can choose any variable you want, but generally we use P and Q. Okay? So I'm going to let P, let me label these. Step 1, step 2. Okay. So step 2, we're going to say that P is the simple statement, 1 is a pig, and we're going to let Q be the simple statement, 1 is pink. All right, so that's the completed step 2. Step 3 is write the if-then solid fact statement using the variables decided upon in step 2. All right, so step 3, we want to rewrite this conditional using these variables. All right, so since this is an if-then statement, we know it's going to use the arrow, right? So we have P implies Q. So step 3 looks like that. P implies Q. All right, step 4. Step 4 says rewrite the argument as an if-then statement. So this was our solid fact, the thing that we assume is true because it's what they gave it to us. This here is our argument. All right, so this here's our argument. And we want to write that in if-then form. All right, so what that looks like is if I am pink, then I am a pig. All right, step 5. Do you see step 5 says, label each part of the argument written in if-then form from step 4 with the appropriate variable letter from step 2. It's very weird, it's a long process. All right, so step 5, we want to take this and we want to decide what variable goes with this statement, I am pink. It'd be Q, right? Because over here we said if one is pink, we're going to name that part of it Q. So Q is going to be the I am, I don't want to define it. Q is, Q is the I am pink part. And that makes P the I am a pig part. So that is what step 6 was. So 5. It's like a 6 to me from this. All right, so now if we go on to step 6, it says write the if-then statement from step 4 using the variables decided upon in step 5. So now we're going to rewrite this using these variables we already defined. All right, so if I am pink, that is the Q part. Let me put step 6 up here. I am pink. Then I am a pig, and the I am the pig is the P part. So we have Q implies P. All right, so this was just the setup. Now we're actually getting to the part where we can create our truth table. All right, so step 7, and I'm going to have to erase this to have room. So step 7. Create a truth table using the variables from step 2 and the 2 conditional statements from steps 3 and 6. So we have the conditional statement from step 6 still up here, so I'll go ahead and circle that. But what our truth table will look like will be this. I'll write it and then I'll move out of the way. This is what we're going to have. The P and Q are the variables from step 2. The P implies Q is the conditional from step, from step 3. And then the Q implies P is the conditional here from step 6. Now we're just going to fill out this truth table like we've done thus far. So I'm going to give you guys a chance to practice. All right, so we'll start in the back. Tanya, if P is true and Q is true, what's P implies Q? Do you have your paper there with you? You want to take a guess? You have to take a good shot. If P implies Q, if P is true and Q is true, yeah, it'd be true. All right, what about if Q implies P? Q is true and P is Q. True. True, yeah. I said P is Q, but that's all I meant. All right. All right, Chance, what would this one be? P implies Q. If P is true and Q is false. False. Okay, what about the last one? Q implies P. True. Very good. All right. Okay, Dallas, what about this one? False implies true is true. And true implies false is false. All right, Taylor. False implies false is
True.
very good, true. And false implies false.
True.
Yeah, yeah. They're not the same. All right, so I'm actually going to use this one truth table for the next steps. You can draw individual truth tables. I did leave you room, or I tried to leave you enough room for that on your handout. But just for board space and time space, I'm just going to use this. Do you need a handout, Amanda? Did you get the did you get a handout called Deductive Argument Analysis Template?
If it was today, no.
Okay. Let's see. So I'm out of copies. I will go make copies of grid activity. Thank you, Mariah. Okay, there we go. All right, so this is step 7. So step 8 is find which variable represents the premise of the argument. So this is a little bit of a review, which will be good because this will be on your test next week. Let's see, who's next? Rebecca, you're next. You're like, why me? I know, it's okay. It's fine if you get it wrong. All right, here's your argument. Remember, the premise is what your premise is what you're using to support your conclusion. So you either have, your premise can be, I am pink, or your premise can be, I am a pig. Which one do you think your premise is? I am pink. Yep. Your premise is I am pink. If you remember, oh, it's still written up, you're good. If you remember, another way to identify your premise is to look at the statement between your if and your then. All right, so that's step 8. So step 8 was identify premise. I'm not gonna write that up here. No room. All right, this is where I got confused on Tuesday, and so that's why it's all written out, so we can make it a nice, smooth transition. All right, find the rows that satisfy both of the following conditions. So we want to find the rows where the variable representing the premise is true. So we said the premise is I am pink, right? We also said that I am pink goes with the variable Q. So for this, we want to look at the column Q. But that's not the only thing we can look at. The second part of that is, and we want the conditional representing the solid fact to also be true. So this, and I'm going to label this, so this is the premise. Maybe this will be helpful to you guys. Premise of argument. This is the solid fact conditional. Okay. So we want to find which rows have a true value in both the Q column, which is the premise of our argument, and the P implies Q column, which is the solid fact conditional. So for those, I find it helpful to circle. You don't have to, but remind you where you're going. All right, so it's true here, true here, true here, and true here. Notice I did not circle this row because it does not satisfy both conditions. All right, for the row, and this is step 10, so step 10 is next. For the rows decided upon in step 9, so in step 9 we decided upon this row and this row, okay? For those rows, circle the truth value in the argument column. And we already said our argument conditional was Q implies P. So this is our argument column, or I'll put argument conditional. And so I'm going to circle the value here and here. So it says there, if the circled values in the argument column are all true, then the argument is valid. If not, then the argument is not valid, or as I say in the book, invalid. So this argument is invalid because one of our values in the argument column that's circled is false. Does anyone have any questions about the steps I took to get there? Okay, so we're gonna do a couple more examples and we'll let you guys work in groups to do your own. I'll make more copies. You'll have this should you want to use it. Okay? All right, so let's look at another example. Just so you know, don't go to your book looking for help on this topic. It's like horrible. I went to like mathexchange.com because the book was so bad. But hopefully the template and with in-class instruction, you'll be good to go. And if you're not, we'll try another way. Okay, all right, so let's look at example 2. And I'm gonna keep this so I can just go along with you guys. All right, so the given solid fact and argument is the following. All professors at the university received a 3% raise this year. My dad is a psychology professor. At the university. So he must have gotten a raise. All right, so I'll let you guys get that written down if you need. Amanda, if you want to use them right on the template, if Summer or Mariah, you guys can give her one more so she can have more than one. So this is the part that goes under the given solid fact and argument. Look at that generosity right there. All right, I think most people have it written down, so I'm going to do step 1. All right, so step 1 is take the solid fact given and make it an if-then statement. So our solid fact, like we talked about in the first example, is this right here. All professors at the university received a 3% raise this year. So I'm going to make that into an if-then. So an example would be, if one is a professor at the university, then one received a 3% raise this year. All right, so step 2 is we want to identify the simple statements that make up this if-then statement or this conditional and label them with variables. All right. Okay, so we have this is a simple statement. One is a professor at the university. And this is a statement. One received a 3% raise this year. I would say we could switch it up and use something other than P and Q, but that might be disastrous, so I'm just going to stick with P and Q. So I'm going to let P be the statement. One is a professor at the university. And we'll let Q be 1 received a 3% raise this year. All right, so now we have it. So then step 3 is write the if-then solid fact statement using the variables decided upon in step 2. All right, so here's our if-then. Here are the variable labels we decided upon. We know that since it's an if-then, it's a conditional, so we're going to use our arrow. So we're going to have P implies Q, because P goes with 1 as a professor, and that's what comes first. And Q is received a raise, and that's what comes second, or in a sense, is that's what the conclusion is. All right, so we're going to have P implies Q. All right, step 4, let's see. If I write down here, can you all see? At the very bottom? Dallas and Chance, can you guys see if I write way down here?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. All right, I'm gonna squeeze down here then. Hi, Kara, I'm all like up in your, your personal space. I know her from college, so it's okay. All right, so we want to rewrite the argument as an if-then statement. So our argument here is my dad is a psychology professor at the university, so he must have gotten a raise. All right, so we're going to write that as an if-then. So it would be, if my dad is a psychology professor at the university, I'm going to abbreviate that. Then he must have gotten a raise. All right, there we go. All right, so here's step 5. It says, label each part of the argument written in if-then form from step 4 with a variable letter from step 2. So we can see my dad is a psychology professor, falls with P, because it says if 1 is a professor, her dad is, or his dad, I don't know what it doesn't say. So we're going to let P be my dad is a, totally going to start abbreviating like crazy to fit it in here. My dad is a psych professor at uni. And then Q will be, he must have gotten a raise. For step 5, the tricky part that I want you guys to pay attention for when you're doing your homework and also when you're doing the in-class activity is to make sure and put the right variable with the right part, because sometimes they're not in order. In that first one, remember, they were switched. Okay, so you got to make sure and label the right ones. All right, step 6. Write the if-then statement from step 4 using the variables decided upon in step 5. All right, so here, this is very convenient because if my dad is a professor, is P, that implies he must have gotten raise, which is Q. All right, so if you'll notice, these two match, which is very handy. All right, so I'm I'm going to go to step 7, but I'll have to erase this. All right, so step 7 is where we create the truth table. All right, so remember our truth table needs our variables decided upon from step 2, our conditional found in step 3, and our conditional found in step 6. I won't do any on the board, but you will see some on your homework and the activity we do. If you have negations, you'll also have to include columns for those negated variables, okay? All right, but as I mentioned, this one's a little different because these happen to match, unlike in our last one. So if you would like, you can leave this column off, all right? I'm gonna put it up there just because it matches exactly how the steps go on your paper, so you can see it. But when you're doing your homework or on the exam, if you want to leave it off, if they match, that's completely fine. All right, so now we're just going to fill out our truth table. And I'll give you guys a break here, and I'll just fill it out here. Okay, there we go. All right, so that's step 7. Now for step 8, we need to find which variable represents the premise of the argument. Let's see. So all right, does someone want to tell me what's the premise of this argument? Look at your if-then statement that we wrote. It's going to be the part between if and then.
Are those columns supposed to be the same?
Yes, because they're both the same conditional.
Dad is a psychology professor at the university.
Perfect, yes. Her dad or his dad is a psychology professor at the university. Okay, so that is our premise. So I can actually have room here, so I'll put here step 8, premise of argument is dad equals professor. Man, the way I'm writing these gets shorter and shorter. All right, dad equals professor. All right, so that letter that went with that was P. Okay, so variable is P. Now I'm going to use blue. All right, so then we move on to step 9. We need to find the rows where the variable representing the premise, which in this case is P. So I'm going to label it here. P, this is the variable representing the premise, is true. And the conditional representing the solid fact is true. So this was the conditional for the solid fact. So now we need to find the rows where both P and P implies Q are true. So this one's pretty easy because it's just one. This row right here. So then in step 10, it says for the rows decided upon in step 9, circle the values in the argument column. So in this situation, since our conditional statement column and our argument column match, like I said, you could just say, well, I already did that, or you can have an additional column like I did, okay? But this is our argument column, argument conditional. And we want to circle the truth value in that column. All right, so now we need to look at all of the circled truth values in our argument column, which is 1. Is that a true or false? It's true, right? Which means that this argument is valid because the only values or the only things circled in the argument conditional column are true values. So this is a valid argument. All right, so I'm going to give you guys the option. I have one more example. We can go through it, or I can let you guys go ahead and get in groups and work on your own. I mean, it's like, no. Okay, so you'd rather do one more example?
Yeah, because this is like clear as mud.
Okay, well, we'll do one more example then.
I see you only circles on one truth on the piece.
Yeah.
And not both.
I do.
One truth on the, because you only circle the true values if it's true here and here. So see, this true value here is paired with a false.
But wouldn't they all just be valid? Like, because then it'd be like true all the way across every time, if you only circle the truth. Right?
So in the okay, the next one is not valid, so we'll see how that works out different there. Okay, so everybody get a good idea. This is valid because the next one we're gonna do is gonna be invalid. Do you want to see how it's different? Okay. Okay, so this is example 3. Yes. Okay. All right, so example 3. Here's your given solid fact and your argument. All custodians live on campus. Nathan lives on campus. So he is a custodian. All right, so there's our example. All right, so in order to hopefully help some of you who are feeling lost or drowning in mud feel a little more clear, I'm going to try to do this one by asking each one of you the steps and helping you work through that step, okay? So if I call on you and you don't know, do not be embarrassed or try to minimize your embarrassment as much as possible because the point of this exercise is to help you understand it better, okay? All right, so step 1. Take the solid fact given and make it an if-then statement. All right, so Amanda, this is you. I did not purposely pick you first, just Rebecca was the last one.
Is it if one lives on campus, they are custodians?
You're very close. So custodians listed first. So we want to say if one is a custodian, then they live on campus.
If one is a custodian.
Yes.
Would be step 1.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So whenever you're changing your given fact into an if-then, you basically work from front to back. Okay. So if, and custodians mentioned first, if one is a custodian, then they live on campus.
Then they, not.
Or if then one, or then it doesn't matter. Just yeah. So if one lives on campus, no, if one is a custodian. Well, I did it wrong, backwards too. If one is a custodian,
Now we're going along with it.
then one lives on campus. I did tell you guys this was not straightforward, so. All right, so there's our step 1. All right, and Rachel, I realize I skipped you, so your turn next. Sorry about that. All right, step 2. Okay. We want to figure out what are the simple statements that make up the if-then and label them with variables. So first we need, can you tell me what are the simple statements in this compound statement?
I'm sorry, I forgot, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm really bad headache right now.
Okay, so does she want to guess or does she want me just to? Okay, so it's going to be, here we go. It's okay. It's okay. All right, so Mariah. All right, for step 2, if we want to identify the simple statements and label them with variables.
So P would be 1
Mm-hmm. P would be 1 is a custodian. And what would Q be?
1 lives on campus.
And Q would be 1 lives on campus. Any questions about how Mariah got step 2? Oops. We good with step 2? Okay. All right, let's look at step 3. All right, so Summer, that's you. Write the if-then solid fact statement using the variables decided upon in step 2. P implies Q. Because here, P is 1 as a custodian, and that is between the if-then part. Since it has an if-then, we know it's a conditional, so we have the arrow. And then 1 lives on campus is our conclusion here, and we said that that was Q. So now this is our solid fact written as an if-then, or as a conditional using variables. Step 4. All right, Tanya, we're back to you. We've made full circle.
Okay, so then I have to make it back into a statement.
Rewrite the argument as an if-then statement.
Oh.
You're fine.
The argument would be Nathan lives on campus.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. So that whole thing, yeah, based on his campus, so he is a custodian.
Okay.
That's the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So we want to convert it into an if-then statement.
Oh, okay. If Nathan lives on campus, then he is a custodian.
Perfect, yes. If Nathan lives on campus, then he is a custodian. Any questions about how Tanya, no, yeah, Tanya got that. Okay, all right, step 5. Label each part of the argument found in step 4 with the appropriate variable letter from step 2. All right, Chance.
It'll be at PQ, but P as Nathan lives on campus.
P is 1 as a custodian.
So this one would be that he is custodian.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So P would be he is a custodian.
And then Q is Nathan lives on
Yes. Yes. Even I can make that.
You always write it like that for argument.
Write it like what exactly?
Like backwards.
No, just for this one. We match up the parts. So here Nathan lives on campus. That goes with Q. So let me go ahead and finish writing this out and then we'll. Okay, so let me lay this down here. All right, so look at our second.
Why wouldn't it be P?
Why wouldn't this be P? Because P, we already decided, was somebody that's a custodian. We're taking the part of the argument.
From first.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. You feel good about that now, Rebecca? Okay. All right. Any other questions about step 5? Okay. All right. So let's go on to step 6. We'll have to start erasing here. One moment. Sorry, my papers are messed up. My step 6 is missing. Oh, you. Okay. Sorry. Right, the if. Now I'm all confused. Sorry, one moment. Let me gather myself here. All right, I'm going to put this down and just use this. All right, step 6. Write the if-then statement from step 4 using the variables from step 5. All right, so we want to write this if-then statement using these variables. So let's see, it'd be Dallas. All right, so this is step 6.
So Q implies P.
Q implies P, perfect. All right, so it's Q implies P because we say if Nathan lives on campus, and Nathan lives on campus, we decided was Q, then he is a custodian. And P is the he is a custodian part. So Q implies P. I'm going to erase this to make the truth table. All right. All right, okay. So there we go. So we have the variables decided on from step 2, the conditional decided on from step 3, and the conditional decided on from step 6. All right, so since I'm gonna go ahead and fill this in here. Is there a mistake on it? Oh, okay. Because it happens. All right, okay, so here's the completed table. All right, so now we've gotten to the part that caused some confusion, I think, with the previous one. All right, so for step 9, we're looking only for the rows where the letter that is the premise of our argument and the letter of the conditional that has to do with our solid fact are both true. All right, so actually skipping up to step 8, I'm so excited about step 9. Step 8, first we need to decide which variable goes with the premise of our argument. All right, so let me find my green pen here. Or no, I won't be. Okay, so the premise of our argument is Nathan lives on campus. The reason that's the premise of our argument, if you'll remember in step 4, we rewrote our argument as if Nathan lives on campus, then he is a custodian. So the sentence, the simple statement between if and then is Nathan lives on campus. That makes it our premise. All right, so this is our premise. And which letter did we assign to that? We assigned Q. All right, so this means that column Q, this is our premise column. Now, let's see, what was our answer on step 3? P implies Q. And that's because that is the conditional statement for our solid fact written in variables. So that means this statement, this column here, is the conditional for our solid fact. All right, so you guys tell me, in which rows is both Q and P implies Q true?
The third one.
First one and the third one, right? So first one, Q is true and P implies Q is true. And the third one, Q implies true, sorry, Q and P implies Q are both true. Is everyone good with how I got to those circles? All right, so this takes us to the last step. On the rows that have those circles, we also want to circle the truth value that is in the argument column. And that argument column is that Q implies P. All right, so this here, this is our argument conditional column. So on row 1, we want to circle it. And on row 3, we want to circle it. Now the question we ask ourselves to know whether this is a valid or invalid argument is whether, looking only at the values in the argument column, are both things that are circled true? They are not. And since one of our circled values is false, that means this argument is invalid. Okay. So argument is invalid. How does everybody feel after that? A little bit better? Okay, all right. So I have some for you guys to work on in groups. Okay. Somebody groaned. How'd I got, oh, okay, let me see. The second circles, or this column, or one of the ones that unfortunately already erased. This one here. So you know, you can kind of still see it here. We just kind of, so we have these circled, right? And those. Okay, we have these two, so you're good about how we got those. Okay. So all I did is I said, okay, I only want to circle the values in the argument column if I've already circled stuff over here. So that's why I circled this, because these already were circled. I didn't circle this value here. I didn't circle this one because the ones to the left of it weren't circled.
Well, I get that part, but like, why? Or they just wrote.
Oh, just the 2 rows? Okay, because in step, let's see what step is that. In step 9, we only wanted to focus on the rows where Q and P implies Q were both true. So it's only in row 1 and 3 that Q and P implies Q were true. Here, let's see, I can still kind of see it. Sometimes it looks something like that. So in this one, this was Q, this was P implies Q. So in this situation, both of them were false, so we didn't want to circle And in this no, this would have to be false. There we go. Okay, in this situation, this one was false, so we didn't want a circle. They both had to be true in order to warrant a circle.
So then you just circle the third one because it was the same row as the other one?
Exactly.
Oh.
Any other questions? Okay, so let me see how many people are here. All right. Why don't you guys, would you rather me number you off or pick your own groups? Silence means I'm going to number you off. Okay, all right. So once, this is not numbering, this is me counting how many of you guys there are. Okay, well, somebody's going to have a group of, okay, so I want to number 1 to 4, and then group 1 is going to have 3 people. That's good. All right, so Sever, you're 1, 2, 3,
1,
2, 3, 4. All right. Okay, so 1, 2. So let's do this so you guys know who you are. And you guys want to do them on the board so I can come by and help, or do you guys want to do them on your table? You want to do it on the table? Okay, that's fine with me. All right, so let's do this. 1 scatter somewhere here, 2 somewhere there, 3 somewhere over there, and 4 somewhere over here. Just that way you'll know how to find each other. I gotta run to my office real quick to grab the stuff because I forgot it, and then I'll be right back.
Oh, gosh. Is that?
Stay at it.
Huh?
Are you on green?
Yeah.
I am too.
Okay, I'm gonna go around. So okay. And it's just a recording. Sorry. That's my, I get it, it's just that I have to look at, yeah, and all make mistakes. Oh, okay, what is it, the first one's true, and the second one's false, and then it's false, yeah, and then all the rest of it. Yeah. I see that he's certified. You're not okay. I'm stressed out.
You guys need I'll be walking around to help. It's okay. That's why we're doing it in here and not on your own. Oh, you up by yourself, Chance? You're like, I was gonna say they all abandoned you. What did you do to them? All right. Okay, I'm gonna run and make more copies of the step-by-step sheet for you guys as well.
Oh, okay, I tried to. What is this used for? Like, who does this for a job?
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, what am I
I'm
gonna use
50
it?
years old and I'm never gonna use this. Like, who's in charge of all of this to get your degree? Unless you're gonna be like a physicist or maybe a scientist and doing like hypotheses, like theories and.
Something I won't do.
Yeah.
I got those down. Yeah.
Okay. So you gotta make it in
This is what the people.
if dog and my dog works.
Because you're really
Yeah.
gonna do this whole back. Yeah. So this part's not right now. So the second part, yeah, the second part's not right. So it would just be inverting this part into an if and when. So it'd be like.
Oh, come on. Right, does anyone?
You think so?
You guys all have one of these, or you need one? Okay, you go.
So which ones are we making mistakes?
You guys all have one, you
All
need one?
dogs
We're good? Okay. You guys both have one of these? You're good.
So it's like this.
Oh,
So if you look
okay.
at like barks, then one is a dog. I pulled up the paper. It was so and then one bark.
Yep.
And they didn't sound good to me.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's right. And you can say that, you could say, oh, okay, so this one reason is specific on the example, is just like, if, if somebody was, I can't, or the other. Yeah, so you can either one or you know. One goes. You guys doing good so far? Okay. No one's crying, so, oh, please don't cry. I'm so bad. I cried on my couch this class so many times though. Oh my gosh, that would be horrible. That would feel so awful.
Okay, so I put, what did you guys put? Yeah, one part, one is dog. Okay.
Yep. Alright, you guys need help? I'm sorry. You're gonna feel so accomplished when you're done. I love that sign. That was awesome.
So the argument would be
Oh,
I have
okay.
a dog.
So, yes. Since this one has a specific name, you can continue to use it. So before we just said something like, everyone who looks at this study is something. So that's what I said, like, but here it says is to, so you can go ahead and actually set one. I'm sorry. If, since this is already in, if this one, someone else. Kind of, yeah.
I was looking at the previous one, the argument was Nathan was. I don't know. I don't know, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Because you could say like,
then on the more
I
examples.
my dog barks.
I just put it in
My
the
dog
same
barks,
order.
my dog barks, and I bark. I don't know.
Oh, you're not barking.
I might be after today.
Yeah. Thank you. I can say like words and food words, yeah. So she wants a conversation about eating. That's what I'm saying. Or about classes. Like,
That might be it, if I.
that's very true. Okay.
Yeah.
Your question?
We lost.
Okay, well, let's see where you at.
And we got to 4.
Okay, perfect.
So, it's like the argument is therefore my dog barks.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have a dog, therefore my
I was
dog
like-
barks.
I was like, you messed this up.
I did. I was like, what are you little thing? You guys can see that. Yeah, no, it's, I have a dog. There you go.
Okay.
I wrote it.
See, so you were right all along. You were like, what are you
No confidence
If I
in you,
have
Taylor,
a
done.
dog, so it was then, if I have a dog, then.
My dog barks. So he said. She said, so if I have a dog, then my dog barks.
Yes.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, no, you were right all along. We were just doubting you. If I have a dog, then my dog barks. Man, I feel dumb.
Yeah.
Okay, then we gotta assign that into variables. Right, and we gotta match it. Okay, so I have a dog, so that would go to Q.
Yeah.
Mine are farms. Then Q and Y, C.
Maybe. Guys, do you have a question, or you want me to like split her away and then come back in a few minutes? Yeah. Yeah.
See, these are the ones you're just buzzing. Okay, so it's only false if the first one is true and the second one is false. So this one is false, and then the rest of them are all true. Okay. All right, and then Q and oh my gosh, it's kind of clicking now.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to find the variation.